Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Nick and Joe Show. I am Joe, he is Nick, and I am sitting here in the Think Radio broadcast studio in Canada's national capital, and Nick, for the first time in a while, is actually remote, talking to us from, as we like to call it, Bunker F, which is actually Nick's farm. Anyway, let's not get into that, ladies and gentlemen. We've had a pretty active and even wild first three segments, hour and a half, and I don't think we're going to slow down now because we have, I think, a very interesting topic to discuss, and that is the future of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Should we get rid of it? Should we defund it? Whatever our decision is, how do we go about doing it? And you with us, Nick?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that you were there and ready and raring to go.
Well, see, I was thinking about the CBC conversation, and it's either going to be really short or it'll take the full half hour.
Hey,
my answer is: do we need the CBC?
No, but we are professional. We are professional radio talk show hosts, and so believe me, we can take a 10-second answer and string it out to half an hour.
Yes, that's right. We're kind of like lawyers. The only way we can say less is by talking longer.
Hey, listen, if you missed, if you're listening to the show live, you can still join into our live chat. Just click on the chat bubble in the live player. That's if you're listening online, and you register if you have to register if you haven't done that before. And if you have done that, you may have to log in. Either way, that's to make sure you're a real flesh and blood human being. And we don't sell, distribute, share any of your personal information. As I said, that's just to weed out those lurking liberals out there. And I wish we had more liberals participating in the chat room, Nick. And if you're listening to the podcast,
it would make for one spicy meatball.
It would. And if you're listening to the podcast, make sure, if you haven't heard yesterday's podcast, make sure you go and listen to it, part 3 of episode 164, which is this week's episode, because it's a pretty outrageous thing, the whole idea about canceling Canada Day. We're not going to rehash it. Go back and listen to it, ladies and gentlemen, after you're done listening to this segment. So, the CBC, Nick. Do we get rid of the CBC?
Yes. Short answer, well, let me give you the short answer first. Absolutely. I think, like any other large, it's not a multinational corporation, but it's in Canada. It's almost a monopoly, especially in a lot of your more remote communities. It's the only source of information they have. Now, with modern technology, that doesn't have to be the case anymore. With the number of satellites we have circling the world, like Elon Musk is bringing on internet that's blindingly fast. My son-in-law has been waiting with bated breath for this to come on stream. He wants to get it the moment it's available. And you don't need a national broadcaster anymore in order to get the information that most people would want to get, like what's going on in the world, different forms of music and entertainment. All that's now provided by the free market in a way that makes the CBC redundant, because let's remember what the core mandate of the CBC was when it was first founded, and that was to promote Canadian identity and to make sure that Canadians were aware of what was going on in the world, because there really weren't a whole lot of national broadcasters available. You had small market broadcasters, a radio station in each town, but nothing that was syndicated or nothing that was across the country and able to disseminate information, be it in a time of emergency or be it just everyday life. You could count on certain things from the CBC, like even just set their clock, because they always played at noon, from the National Research Council, exactly noon, when you had 3 dots and then the long dot. That was 12 o'clock.
Right, 7
So they did have
613-745-1576. That's the national. If you want to set your clocks to the National Research Council of Canada time, that's what you dial. That's the phone number you dial. 613-745-1576. And it will give you a timed 30 seconds. So it'll give you a hack. It'll give you a hack every 10 seconds for 30 seconds before it hangs up. That's how you set your watch if you're really interested. If you don't happen to have a smartphone with internet time on it already. How do you like that? There's a little bit of
trivia. Now that's something. Yeah, there you go. I did not know that.
See, that's why people tune into us, Nick.
The bottom line is,
you never know what you're going to learn on the Nick and Joe Show of use.
You never know what you don't know until you hear it here. But to get back to the CBC for a minute, they played a huge role in World War II. People like Ross Monroe did, yeoman's work in bringing Canadians what was going on in Europe and in the different theaters that we were engaged in. There's a great story about Ross Monroe going ashore at Operation Husky, which was the invasion of Sicily or Italy?
Sicily.
Sicily's part of Italy, but it was the boot. Yes, it was Sicily, I'm pretty sure. And he actually swam ashore with a waterproof typewriter and was in a slug trench with sniper bullets whipping around his head, typing out the daily report, sent it off to a news ship just offshore. And we got news about the invasion of Sicily about 12 hours before the rest of the world did because of the work that he did. So if he could see what the CBC has turned into, he'd be spinning in his grave, because that's not what we have today as a CBC. Is not at all within its original mandate. They will tell you, well, we promote Canadian content. Yeah, but what is it? It's a lot of it is Indigenous, and I'm not knocking Indigenous culture, but what about the culture of the Irish or the culture from the different other groups that formed what is now modern Canada? There's always. It makes me so angry, the bias built into not only the news but the stories themselves. It's enough to make your hair curl. They have to slant it no matter what they do to make anybody who disagrees with them go, oh, I must be the dummy because CBC says this.
Well,
and they play people like David Suzuki, and just it goes on and on and on.
Well, Nick, part of the thing about the CBC, and first, let me first say that I agree with you. I think it's time that the CBC goes. Now, there are a lot of people out there that are going to say, well, let's keep the CBC, but let's defund it. I'm really not sure how that is supposed to work. It's a government corporation. Granted, the CBC television sells advertising time, but CBC Radio does not. And so, if you're going to defund it, then you have to throw it out there into the ad world and make it, sink or swim. But my argument is, look, I don't want to have control over it. And that's the whole defunded argument, is defund it, but we will still want to have control over it. And, my rule of thumb is, if you don't want to pay for it, you don't have control over it, right? So I don't see the point of defunding it. The way I see it is just convert it into a corporation, a private corporation with shares, and then sell the shares. In other words, don't defund the CBC, privatize it, like we privatized other government-run institutions over the years. And let people who want to buy its assets and run it profitably or not. I don't care. So I'm not in favor of killing the CBC. I'm not in favor of defunding the CBC. I'm in favor of privatizing the CBC. And then it'll work or it won't work, and it's not our business as taxpayers.
Well, I would take it one step further And the reason why it would break it up and sell off its components is because if left unto itself, it will swallow whole advertising communities. It is a monster. And it when they do rating sweeps at radio stations, they don't include CBC because their numbers are so high. A lot of people listen to radio stations in your larger markets, and that skews the numbers. Well, when you do a book, as they call it in a radio business, when you do a book, it's how you set your advertising rates. So if you are a small, struggling radio station in a market where CBC exists, and you go out and say to your potential customer, look, we have 15,000 listeners. I'm just picking numbers out of the air here. 15,000 listeners, and a 30-second ad is going to cost you X amount of dollars. Then CBC comes along and says, look, we've got 250,000 listeners, and we'll charge you the same amount. The little guy's going to lose. It would be devastating in the marketplace for CBC to be left standing by itself. It would have to be broken up and sold off in bits and pieces, just like you scrap a ship. You cut it up and you sell off the scrap steel, and that's it. It's over. You have to kill it completely, or it will come back to haunt you in ways you can't imagine.
Well, I hear this argument a lot, and I'm a little skeptical because the norm is that if your ratings are higher, then you don't cut your advertising. You don't cut the price you're charging for advertising. You raise it. That's the way it works in the private sector. But look, I at this stage,
that's right. But remember what the CBC is.
I understand, but before anything happens, you have to set a market value for the CBC. You have to first of all assign shares to it. So there's a legislative process to do that. So and then you offer to sell it, and you get buyers, and presumably buyers are going to have to lay out the cash, and for the colossus that it is, it's going to cost a lot of money. So, and this is the way the free market works. But having said that, I would argue, Nick, fine, I don't care, break it up. I just want to see the institution privatized. And if it survives, it survives. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. It's not my concern, and it shouldn't be the concern of any other taxpayer out there. But I want to just, if I could, just shift gears a little bit again, Nick, because I'm feeling a little bit like on every topic that we're talking about tonight, that there's ultimately another and even deeper level to all of this stuff. And my argument would be, first of all, without diminishing my desire to see the CBC privatized, without diminishing that desire at all, I think that it's important for us to take a look at the state of journalism overall in our country and in our society beyond our borders, and to ask ourselves if the CBC problem is really a CBC problem, or is the CBC a symptom of a general degradation in the quality of journalism throughout Western society? And I would argue that it's the latter. That as much, my objection to the CBC is not that it is biased, it's that it's taxpayer funded. I don't believe that in this day and age, as you, I think, so rightly put it, I don't think that in this day and age you have to have a national taxpayer-funded broadcaster to achieve the kinds of things that the CBC was designed to achieve in the first place. I think that we're moving more into the internet age,